All right, welcome to LinkedIn Live. This is Rob Garf with Salesforce, and we're here to talk all things holiday. Can you believe it? We're smack dab in the middle of the holiday season, just coming off of Cyber Week. And before we get into it, I want to thank Salesforce Partner for offering their channel up for us today to talk and get into all the great data insights that we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks. And as we're thinking about the holiday and beyond, I'd really encourage retailers and brands to check out our app exchange at Salesforce. I'm going to put the link in the comments section. You can learn all about our ecosystem beyond Commerce Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Service Cloud. We provide a complementary set of retail solutions to really get you through the holiday and beyond as people are doubling down on digital, not only consumers, but retailers, and moving from scrappy to scale. So, and as we're here today, I'm joined by my good friend, Jason Goldberg. He's the Chief Commerce Strategy Officer at Publicis. Many of you probably know him as Retail Geek. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Rob, it's so good to see you, man. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you as well. I'm really excited to have you here to really crawl through the data, get your perspective and insights on what we're seeing this holiday season. So as we're getting warm here and thinking about holiday, talk to me a little bit. What are you hoping for your best gift? What's on your list this holiday season?
Oh gosh, well, I'm sure my list is a lot like everyone else's. I'm mostly hoping to get some Salesforce stock.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, definitely put that on your list.
Yeah.
For me, I could only hope to get up to speed with my 14-year-old son who has a rig that, could be on any room rater rating. He put together his own computer and built it over the summer, and now he's getting his microphone, he's getting his lights. So if I could only be that cool, we'll see how it goes.
Maybe he'll at least let you borrow it for special occasions. Although listeners on the channel should know that you already are an illustrious 10 out of 10 room rater winner. So if I were
Stop.
you, I might just retire.
I'm blushing. I'm telling you, I agonized over that for about 8 months. So the fact I not only was rated, but I got a 10 out of 10, I got to give somebody else a lot of credit for that. But of course, now that's just going to start a deluge of comments in the comment section. I'd also be interested, speaking of comment section, what others on the line who are listening would like to see this holiday, what they have on their list. But let's dive into it, Jason. And like I said, we're going to talk all things holiday. Certainly, we're not done. We got a couple more weeks to go, and I'm sure a lot of interesting things will happen. But we're coming off Cyber Week. We're coming off Cyber Monday. What we're going to do is, as the baseline, we're going to use our shopping index at Salesforce to really help guide us through this conversation. Those that aren't familiar with our shopping index, it aggregates up billions of shoppers across our platform. We obviously anonymize that, and it really becomes the de facto standard of what's happening in digital, really same site sales. So a real like for like, just as retailers would look at the business. And, the most common question, and I'm sure you're getting it too, as we get you in between your stints on CNN and Yahoo and CNBC or whatever else, thank you for joining us, is what happened on Cyber Monday? And I'll tell you now, we saw some really interesting numbers, 10% growth for the US, 18% global. And at first blush, people would probably say without any context, gosh, that's a bit soft considering we had 55% growth in Q3, 71% growth in Q2. But that's what we're going to do. And again, Jason, I'd be interested. Let's right off the top get your perspective on that, and then we'll dive into some more of the details and unpeel this. Does that surprise you? How should people think about those numbers for Cyber Monday?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. If you would have asked me in January of last year, like what kind of growth should we expect to see on Cyber Monday, I probably would have taken that 10 to 15% growth. But as we got closer to this year, there's so many factors affecting it. I allowed myself to get a little overly optimistic. So I was actually expecting a bigger number for this Cyber Monday, and by expecting, I should say I was actually dreading a bigger number for this Cyber Monday, because for a variety of reasons, it's probably not good for us to have these super peaky days. So I'll say I was a little surprised, but I'll call it a pleasant surprise, that it feels like we're spreading the sales out a little better. We were able to pull more sales in earlier than I was worried we were able to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Again, out of context, probably seems a little softer. Probably, as you said, something any of us would have taken at the beginning of the year. But when you kind of take it out a couple of levels, you'll see that over the course of Cyber Week, we saw 36% year-over-year growth globally and 29% in the US. So that's pretty darn good. So that, gets us to, and by the way, I should say, I'm gonna guide us based on a blog that's gonna come out in a couple hours. So don't tell Kayla Schwartz on my team, because it's gonna, kind of step on our thunder a little bit, although there's so many great insights in there. So I encourage you to check it out. And the first insight gets to, Jason, where you were going, which was the start of the holiday happening earlier didn't diminish Cyber Week demand overall. So you mentioned about pulling forward. That's something that, as an industry, we've been trying to do for decades upon decades, really try to get a better sense of what demand's going to look like so we can have better forecasting going all the way through to Christmas. And this year, because of the pandemic and in large part because of Prime Day happening in the fall, we actually did see that pulling together both in the holiday season and the week. Can you talk more about that dynamic and how it played out this holiday?
Yeah. So maybe to even zoom out super high, and you mentioned Kayla's blog, like she has the burden of like using actual data and evidence and facts. I just get to make stuff up. So I'll oversimplify in super round numbers. Ordinarily, we would expect e-commerce in the US to grow at like 14 or 15%, which is fast growth. Brick and mortar retail tends to grow at like 3 or 4%. So e-commerce historically has been the fastest growing component of retail. Second and third quarter of this year, we were seeing like 175% growth. A lot of us think we're going to end up for all of this year at like 35% e-commerce growth, someplace in there. So what that means is there's so much growth in Q2 and Q3 that the pace is inevitably going to slow down in Q4 to hit that average. And of course, historically, Q4 is the quarter when we have the biggest e-commerce. Yesterday was Cyber Monday. Historically, Cyber Monday is the biggest single e-commerce sales day of the year in the United States of America. This year on Friday, we set the all-time record, right? And then it still seems like even though we didn't grow as fast as we expected, we surpassed Friday on Monday. Is that what the Salesforce data shows as well?
Absolutely. I mean, if you remember it, yeah, absolutely.
So they're the biggest days. So it's hard to have the biggest growth on the biggest days. Like the law of large numbers tends to play into that, right? So because of all those reasons, we would kind of expect something in the like 10 to 25% growth on these super big days, but we would still expect all of November and December to kind of flush out around that 30%. But this year we've got some unusual problems. Every year we always want sales early, but the reason we want sales early is because we want to get the sales at the expense of our competitor, right? Like I want the consumer to spend all their wallet share with me before they go to Amazon. So if I can have a sale event a day before Amazon, that's a win for me, right? So every year, retailers are like, shop early, we have pre-Friday black deals and all these things. And consumers have learned that we're not credible. Like whatever deals we offer before Black Friday, we offer a bigger deal on Black Friday or Cyber Monday. And so we've conditioned consumers to ignore us. So we come in this year, and this year we've got two new problems. We're already at these like Cyber Monday level sales volumes every day since March. not quite that level, but we have this huge peak. So if these days are a holiday peak on top of that peak, it's a peak on peak, And we worry about our systems holding up to that. Our obviously less about that if we're on Commerce Cloud. But we worry about the weakest link in our technology stacks falling down on this peak on peak. And even bigger concern is we worry about our supply chain's ability to fulfill these orders. Can we get the goods from the manufacturer that we sold to the customer? And can we ship the goods through FedEx and UPS? And what we've been talking about for a few years is FedEx and UPS don't want to build a church just for Christmas. So they don't design their networks for the volume they're going to have of shipping this week. So in an average year, FedEx and UPS add about 8% capacity a year. Well, I already mentioned in a typical year, e-commerce packages grow 15%, and this year they're more likely to grow 30%. So if we have to ship 30% more packages, but FedEx only has 8% more slots in their network, we run into a big problem. And that's this problem that you and I have called Shipageddon. And it's a real concern for retailers. Most retailers have agreed to a quota with their shippers, and so they have a limit on the amount of packages they can ship. And we're really worried about taking orders and then not having them arrive in time for Christmas and us being the Grinch that spoiled Christmas. So for all those reasons, we want the orders early this year to take pressure off our supply chain, take pressure off our last mile, take pressure off of our IT systems. So we legitimately were begging customers to order early. And my personal fear was from customers would have learned from years past that we didn't really mean it, and they would ignore our messages. But it now seems like at least some of those customers took those messages to heart and did shop a little earlier.
That's right. So we're gonna talk about Shipageddon in detail in a little bit, and I want to provide a little bit more color with data around what you just mentioned, because it really, I think, brings it home. And before I do that, though, you brought up this conditioning of the consumer, right? I've been calling it discount chicken, the idea that retailers, like you said, have always tried to lure consumers earlier on, but consumers knew better, right? And they, by the way, consumers, you and me, everybody else that is listening today, have always won because we've been patient and we've been able to wait until Black Friday or Cyber Monday or the day before the holiday shipping cutoff window. But there were two big things that happened that both converged to change the dynamic. First is the pandemic. The second was Prime Day. And, again, to throw some data around this, we saw, based on our data on the shopping index, for those retailers not named Amazon, they saw a 66% year-over-year increase for Prime Day. So they took advantage of that halo effect. And then, of course, the pandemic, people were afraid they're not going to get their packages because we all experienced it in the spring. They're worried about product availability because we were all scrambling for certain products, especially essential goods. And they were looking out for their health and safety. And so we did see finally this compelling reason to shop earlier. I mean, these numbers are wild. Like when we look at October, was 51% year over year when you look at it for the month. But when you look at pre-Cyber Week, so not last week, but the prior week, we saw for the whole week an 80% year over year increase. It was actually really highlighted by Friday. Friday, we saw a 95% year over year increase. So, you look at, again, Cyber Monday and you say, it's a little softer, but actually you got to give the retailers a little credit because their strategy, which they've been trying to do for decade upon decade, is finally paying off, which is the smoothing out of demand both earlier in the season and earlier in the week.
Yep. And if you just one more point on these holiday spike days like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, historically there was some endemic reason for that spike, right? So stores were closed on Thanksgiving for a long time, and then every store in America had a doorbuster deal to entice you to get in line in the parking lot Friday morning to go shopping. And even if you were to shop online Friday, you wouldn't shop online in the middle of your Thanksgiving dinner, right? Like you'd wait till your guests went home and then you'd sit down at your computer on Friday and shop. And of course, historically, the only place we had internet access was at work. So Cyber Monday exists because we all, ate too much turkey on the 4-day weekend, and then we came to work and we stole our boss's internet to go shopping, right? So those were kind of the endemic reasons for those peaks. But over the last number of years, those endemic reasons have gone away, right? Like no one goes online anymore. We're always online 100% of the time. So that whole Cyber Monday boss's internet thing is a vestige of the past. And of course, it's just as easy to order cheesecake from your phone under the dining room table during your Thanksgiving meal as it is to wait for Friday to do that. So like for those reasons, we would have expected those peaks to start slowing down and the sales to spread out over more of the holiday period just in general. And then, now with COVID and Prime Day in October, it's even more extreme.
That's right. You're probably one of the few people in the industry actually know the origin of Cyber Monday, with Scott Silverman at NRF at the time coining it for the exact reason you mentioned, in terms of being able to go to work, use high-speed internet, and it created a huge spike. So I guess one of the more common questions is...
Sorry, just in fairness, two folks at the National Retail Federation, Scott Silverman, but also Ellen Davis, coined that term. So I just want to... It's pretty cool. So I want to give them both credit.
Yeah, well, shout out to her as well. That's right. Good call, keeping me honest. And so, one of the more common questions, Jason, I get in these lines are, Cyber Monday, does Black Friday go away? I mean, what I'm hearing you talk about and what I say as well is, yeah, it's become a bit marginalized, but let's not, go too overboard. There's certainly the two largest days digitally in the holiday season. How should retailers think about that? What are you seeing? What do you think this looks like over the next couple of years? How does it play out?
It's really tricky. Like I talk about all these trends in three buckets. Like there's some trends that are pretty easy to prognosticate they're going to continue. So like all the people that learn how to shop for groceries online are probably going to keep shopping for groceries online. There's some trends that are pretty clearly not going to continue. Like, nobody's been on a vacation in a year, so we spent all our vacation funds at Home Depot improving our houses and our offices, right? Like, we're probably not going to, hopefully next year we're all on vacation and not spending quite as much on our homes. But then there's this third bucket of trends, which is the hardest, which are ones that may continue, may not, right? And to me, Black Friday is a little bit in that camp. This year, we really had to avoid the traditional brick and mortar Black Friday. Like, two issues. Ordinarily, we're enticing people to stand in line for an hour before our store opened Friday morning, right? For a doorbuster deal. And traditionally, those deals were, you must be present to win. You had to go to the store. You couldn't get that doorbuster online. And if you'll remember, like a news item every year on Black Friday would be the woman that used pepper spray to knock out her competitor and get the last Black Friday TV deal at Best Buy, right? Like, I mean, I joke, but these are real things. So in the pandemic, not safe to have all those people queued up outside the store. And so we don't want that. But even more, for most of our stores, it's illegal. They have artificial caps on the amount of people that are allowed in the store. So it's 25 or 50% of the maximum occupancy. So this year, we literally couldn't do a traditional Black Friday. So we overtly tried to avoid it. We said, it's going to be Black Friday all month. The doorbuster deals aren't available in the store. They're only available online. We're going to have different sales each week. All these things to kind of dissuade you from driving to the store Friday morning. And they worked. The traffic in the store was down more than 50% on Friday. So next year, when hopefully by holiday of next year, we're going to have good herd immunity. There have been some vaccines that'll be widely available for a number of months by then. So a lot of those artificial reasons that we would avoid in-store traffic have probably gone away. So are retailers going to return to try to enticing people to line up? And are they going to continue to have store-only Black Friday deals? Or are they going to have learned how awesome e-commerce is and just lean into that new behavior? I suspect next year we'll see some of both. I don't think it'll be an all or nothing deal.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, so hey, let's shift gears a little bit. And as I say that out loud, I'm bringing up delivery and trucks. And so there's some sort of pun in there that, yeah, you would have appreciated, I'm sure, Jason. So the second insights that you'll see in more detail in the blog that I'm totally spilling all the beans on right now, sorry, Kayla, is around the fact that shipping is defining winners and losers. And we've been talking about Shipageddon. We had forecasted coming into this holiday that we'd be, as an industry, about 5% over capacity for the traditional carriers, resulting in about 700 million packages that are at risk of being delayed. And a funny story, well, I don't know how funny it is, but I think you would appreciate it, so maybe others will as well. This started to come to light for me actually 2 years ago when my nephew was moving from Long Island to Boston. And his father, my brother-in-law, was looking for a rental van to bring his furniture up to Watertown where he was moving. And guess what? For all of December, after the 7th time he called the local U-Haul station, they said no trucks available through the whole month because Amazon had rented them out, right? Had done a pre-buy. And so I started to think, and obviously we get this surge in digital demand, which only accentuates the problem. And voila, we have Shipageddon. So you talked about the constraint, maybe spend another minute or two highlighting that, but I'd be interested, Jason, from your perspective, while candidly at this point it's a little too late if you haven't planned accordingly, what have retailers been doing to find creative ways to get, the product to the customer or the customer to the product?
Yeah. So I think you're exactly right on the problem. Traditionally, I don't know if people remember, but like all the carriers rent vans to address this extra capacity. So a common thing is residents will call the police on a UPS driver because they're not used to a guy pulling up in an unmarked white van and carrying packages to their door. They assume it's someone trying to steal packages, right? When it's actually UPS and FedEx have rented vans in addition to Amazon. So that's a traditional thing. I'm told this year that the new thing is you also can't buy a rental van. Like apparently, I'm sorry, you can't buy a delivery van because all these fleets are trying to grow. They're not now just trying to rent them. They're trying to buy permanent capacity. And apparently there's a worldwide shortage of delivery vans. So that's a harder get than toilet paper right now. So what do we do about this, right? Like the answer isn't that we're just gonna sell twice as many packages via e-commerce and expect UPS to deliver them all from our fulfillment center. The best answer is to get the customer to pick up the packages but still sell them online, right? So that's curbside pickup. And you guys have been reporting for a while this huge uptick in utilization on curbside pickup. I know you'll share the real data with me, but I think retailers that offer that amenity are growing much faster than retailers that are not offering that amenity. And that amenity has another big advantage. If I collect an e-commerce order and fulfill it from my fulfillment center, it means I had to put some of my inventory in the fulfillment center. Mm-hmm. And that means that it's not available to a customer that might want to walk in the store, right? So I call it fragmenting my inventory. Some of it is in store 1, some of it's in store 2, some of it's in the fulfillment center. And then it's hard to match up the supply to demand because I might have too much inventory in store 1, not enough in store 2, and not enough in the fulfillment center. If I use my store as a fulfillment center, I solve that problem, right? I get to consolidate my inventory into fewer places that have more demand. And then if I get the customer to drive to my parking lot and pick it up, I solve the last mile problem. I don't need the FedEx or UPS capacity or the van. My family's making Alexa announcements. I'll hit mute on
They're
that.
saying your package is delayed.
Yeah,
Come
my
back
5-year-old
later.
has learned how to make household announcements on the Alexa, which is awesome. So for all those reasons, curbside to me is a really smart play, and we're not really at it yet. But next week we're going to hit what we tend to call the shipping cutoff, or maybe 2 weeks. We're going to hit what we call the shipping cutoff, the last day you can ship a cheap package ground and get it to a customer in time for Christmas. So increasingly, the only way to get consumers their packages in time for Christmas is going to be this curbside pickup amenity as well. So for all those reasons, that feels like the number one tactic for omni-channel retailers to lean into. And I've been rambling, but one other point, it's a good tactic when even Amazon, which does not have the largest retail fleet in the world, even Amazon is leaning into curbside pickup and enticing their customers to use these pickup amenities. Go to a Whole Foods store, go to an Amazon bookstore, go to an Amazon locker location, because even Amazon would rather you pick up the package than deliver it right now.
Yeah. So let me, as you mentioned, provide a little bit of color around the buy online, pick up at store, whether that's curbside, drive-through, or any other creative option. We saw for Cyber Week alone, those that provided that service grew at a 32% higher rate than those retailers that didn't. Very similar, by the way, Jason, as you talked about last holiday season, where it allowed those retailers to extend or keep that holiday shipping cutoff window open, especially for the shorter. Remember last year we had about a week fewer days between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so it really allowed them to extend it. Essentially for all intent and purpose, you're outsourcing the fulfillment to the consumers, and the consumers don't tend to mind. The other area we're seeing is, in addition to the traditional carriers, is tapping into the crowdsourcing providers. I actually signed up as a delivery gig driver a couple of weeks ago, and you'd be happy to know, Jason, I don't know if it would surprise you or not, I passed the background check, and it was so easy. So I know, right? I was holding out hope there, and it worked out okay. But I just saw how easy of a process it is. So it allows for essentially, or hypothetically, a unlimited supply of drivers to be able to get that, package from the store where it's there for the inventory, as you talked about, to the consumer's doorstep by bypassing the surcharges or the caps that we're seeing levied on the retailers today.
Yeah. Another side point there, Andy Dunn, who founded Bonobos, he used to have this quote that I loved. E-commerce is awesome as long as you don't care about EBITDA. Right. And the point being, it's actually hard to be really profitable at e-commerce. And fundamentally, part of that reason is when a customer goes and shops in your store, they provide the labor to pick the products off the shelf, right? And then they provide the labor to drive those products home. When customers shop online, we have to provide the labor to pick the products, and generally we have to provide the labor to deliver those products to the home. And those are extra costs that consumers don't generally want to pay for, right? And so it puts some economic pressure on e-commerce. Well, now that the pandemic has accelerated e-commerce, it's a hugely meaningful part of every retailer's sales. We've seen retailers like Nordstrom are now majority e-commerce companies. They sell more e-commerce than they do in brick and mortar. A retailer like Williams-Sonoma does as well. It's super important for those sales to be profitable. And one of the best ways to make them profitable is get the customer to provide that delivery labor, right? And so for all of those reasons, that's a great vehicle for solving the problem. And per your point, retailers that invested in the capability to do that before the pandemic have gotten outsized return. So in my mind, Target is kind of a best-in-class retailer at fulfilling orders from stores. Something like 95% of all their e-commerce orders are fulfilled from stores. They bought their own fulfillment company and shipped to do that, so they're really well positioned. We've seen Walmart put a lot of effort into using stores as fulfillment centers. Best Buy rolled out curbside pickup to 800 stores in a weekend. Like, we're seeing all these amazing things, and the retailers that were able to do those things are really the best position for this holiday.
Yeah, and actually, I'd say the most benefit wasn't even over Cyber Week, because you had Thanksgiving, the stores are closed, so you weren't picking anything up there. Not as much traffic or hours open on Friday. So when we look at it across the entire holiday season, we're anticipating exponential growth for those that offer that. So hey, let's move things along a little bit. We have 4 predictions or insights, I should say, based on the data from the shopping index over the holiday. The third, I'm just going to glaze over and then move to the fourth to bring us home here, Jason. And the third is around the fact that earlier promotions and discounts really attracted these anxious consumers who are looking to purchase to avoid the crowds of the physical store and wanting to make sure they get the product. So we highlighted the steady drumbeat of discounts. We talked about not just email, but push and SMS notifications actually grew in triple digits. And so that plays to the point around the smoothing out of demand. But that moves us to the fourth area that I want to dive into with you here, which is the growth in digital, again, through the entire holiday season. Our data shows that it was really driven in large part by net new digital shoppers. Average order value was actually fairly flat year over year, both globally and the US. And so you really look to just the influx of new shoppers. You talked about buying groceries online, which ordinarily you wouldn't have done necessarily a year ago. There's also a whole new set of online shoppers. I use my mother-in-law as an example. She would never buy groceries online. She want to go in the store, check out the perishables, make sure they're fresh. But with her pre-existing lung condition, she wasn't, and she hasn't been in a store. And that's behavior for her anyway, sample size 1, isn't snapping back like a rubber band. So can you talk, I know, by the way, I should say, again, throwing data at it to substantiate it, is we saw over the holiday 22% unique shoppers digitally. So can you talk a little bit about, again, in terms of these trends, what will stick? What are you seeing? What categories you're seeing bubbling up? And what do we look like? And what does this look like moving forward?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw a bone to all the data geeks out there, all you guys sitting in front of your Tableau dashboards right now. The answer to that question is segmentation, right? Like well, I do think there's a lot of new shoppers in market. They're not spread out evenly. So the way to think about this is every product category has a different degree of digital disruption, right? So if you were in the book business or the video business, you were disrupted by digital 15 years ago, right? And today we have very high digital penetration. There are not a lot of people that have never purchased a video digitally. If you were in the consumer electronics business, if you were Circuit City, you got disrupted by digital 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? 10 years ago. If you're in the apparel industry, you probably got disrupted like 5 to 8 years ago digitally. If you were an auto dealership or a grocery store, you had not been disrupted by digital at all. Like your penetration of sales was less than 1%. And here's why it's so important that I call out those two categories. Grocery store and automobile sales together are 50% of all consumer spending. Each one of those categories is about a quarter of consumer spending. So half of all retail sales are grocery and auto dealerships, which had almost no digital penetration before the pandemic. But if you need a new car right now, or you need some groceries, the only safe way to get them is online, right? So the overwhelming majority of people had never bought a car online before, and the overwhelming majority of people had not placed an order for digital groceries before. Walmart had about 25 million active users on their mobile app. Now they have like 60 million active users, right? And per your point, once you buy a car online, you're probably going to buy your next car online, right? And once you have the magic iced coffee show up at your house, you're probably not going to drive to the grocery store as much to restock your iced coffee. And so I think those are two trends that are net new. They're seeing the fastest growth, and some version of them is likely to be permanent.
Yeah, and the data bears that out, right? So according to our research, it's always good. And I made you go first, and then I get to actually say if it's true or not. But you're right on, Jason, of course. I mean, over Black Friday, as an example, based on our shopping index, we saw that food and beverage was the highest performer in terms of growth at 112%. We look at it last year. I mean, it wasn't even on the chart. It's just not something you would necessarily think to buy online, especially during Black Friday. All right, so hey, I'm gonna bring us home in a minute. Although we're getting a bunch of questions coming in through the live stream, I want to pick on one of them, going back to shipping and going back to Amazon and Shipageddon, which is Amazon placed a big bet over the last couple of years on the last mile. And in the spring, according to this questionnaire, person who's asking the question, they weren't hit as hard as others for delivery, meaning they hit their expected delivery windows. So the question is, has that benefited Amazon because they've created more confidence? And what can retailers do to instill more confidence in their ability to get the product to the consumer?
Interesting. Yeah. So we debate this question a lot. I don't know the answer, but I could tell, I guess I would say there's kind of a macro and micro level. At a macro level, unquestionably, Amazon is one of the biggest beneficiaries of the pandemic, right? And if you were going to sit down with a clean piece of paper and say, how would you want to design a company to be best suited for a pandemic? You would end up drawing a picture of Amazon on that piece of paper, right? Everything that they've been doing over the last number of years and all the big strategic bets they make fit perfectly with the needs of the pandemic. So in that sense, your questionnaire is unquestionably right. And so us as the rest of retail have to think how we're going to respond to that. But I will say there's a micro way in which Amazon wasn't a beneficiary. Amazon already had the largest share of any retailer in e-commerce, and they were the first stop for most consumers. But I would argue that even Amazon had disruptions as a result of the pandemic, right? So you may remember the big Q1 news from Amazon was they were doubling down on fulfillment and they were shifting to all one-day delivery. I know that feels like about 800 days ago. So it was this year. So, Amazon was getting ready to deliver really fast. And then in the midst of the pandemic, Amazon had to say, you know what? We can't honor our one-day delivery. We're going to have to slow down and we're going to have to prioritize essential goods. So if you're a seller of food items or toilet paper, we're gonna fulfill your stuff as fast as possible. But if you're a seller of rubber swimming pools, you know what? We're not gonna promise 2-day delivery. And in some cases it was 2-week delivery or 3-week delivery. And so guess what? In this summer, in the middle of the pandemic, we all wanted rubber swimming pools in our backyard, and we actually couldn't get them as reliably from Amazon as we are used to. So it kind of opened the door for other retailers to get a first-time digital trial. Like maybe you went to Target or Bed Bath & Beyond for that rubber swimming pool because Amazon was uncharacteristically reducing its service level. So I would just start with that argument. We saw people like eBay get a nice bump, right, as a result of the pandemic because people were looking for alternatives to Amazon for fulfillment. That being said, Amazon has invested a ton in their last mile. They have way more fulfillment centers than anyone else. So order of magnitude, we'll call it 170 big fulfillment centers in the US, over 1 million square feet each. The next biggest e-commerce operator in the US is Walmart that has less than 20. So most people have 1 or 2. So Amazon has a huge advantage there. And now Amazon owns a bunch of their own delivery drivers. So during the pandemic, about 70% of all their packages get delivered by Amazon Flex drivers. So they only need UPS and the US Post Office for about 30% of their packages. So for all those reasons, no one is going to beat Amazon in the foreseeable future by building a fulfillment center and driving packages from the fulfillment center. So if you're any other retailer, what you want to do is not try to out Amazon. You want to zig where Amazon zagged. And to me, fulfilling from store and having stuff available same day to customers that are willing to drive, or to your point, using an alternative last mile to get them from that store to the home, which is a much easier problem than from a fulfillment center to the home because the store is much closer to the consumer. Those feel like the strategies I would most lean into to try to get the best share I can from the juggernaut that is Amazon.
Awesome. Hey, so I make two quick points there. One is, I've been talking to a lot of retailers about this for the last 6 months, and one of the common themes is communicate, communicate, communicate. Be transparent. I mean, over Cyber Week, our data shows for the top retailers, 25% of the emails had some sort of message around shipping in the body. So they were being very proactive, of course, trying to drum up demand, right? There was a reason for doing it, but certainly trying to be transparent. That's where SMS and push comes in as well, in terms of being able to provide that visibility. And the second point is cooperation and collaboration. I was talking to Scott Galloway just yesterday and talking about his new book. Yeah, I know. When I say talking, he was doing most of it. And of course, I was enjoying all of it. And one of the points he made was cooperation and collaboration amongst retailers, those that would never sit in the same room with each other because they were arch enemies, need to come together and think about everything from merchandising to supply chain, marketing, and seeing how they can work together to get more of the share out of the hands of the 800-pound gorilla. So, hey, let's kind of bring this home here. I'm sure we're going to be getting the hook pretty darn soon, and we're not so far away from, what is it, 2021? Where are we? I'm in this COVID continuum, and we're almost there. And so, we're now shifting a little bit to, okay, as I started, how do we move from scrappy to scale, and what are some of the major themes that we'll see into the next year? So, Jason, put on your crystal, or look in your crystal ball, I should say. I guess you wouldn't put on your crystal ball, but look in your crystal ball. What are you thinking? What's something interesting that you're going to keep your eye on next year?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna throw out two, because I've learned the best way to do predictions is to throw a lot of them out there, and people will only remember the one that's right.
Yeah.
Like with regard to the pandemic, a lot of us responded to all of these new pressures with paper clips and chewing gum, right? Like we rolled out curbside pickup, but we did it in the most bootleg way possible. We bolstered our e-commerce capacity, but we did it by brute forcing more servers or doing all these things. And now that digital is very obviously a more important part of our future, I think we're going to see retailers really invest in the proper infrastructure to do all these things, right? And so what does that mean? It means you're going to move from your COBOL-based point of sale system that required a 300-foot extension cord to do curbside pickup to a modern, wireless cloud-based point of sale system. It means you're going to move from your old on-prem commerce platform to a modern cloud SaaS commerce platform. If you know where to find any of those, that would be great. So I do think a lot of these investment trends, like retailers are going to spend less money remodeling stores, and they're going to spend more money licensing more of the Salesforce stack to make all of these digital capabilities more robust, right? So I do think your space is a great space to be in right now. It's a good investment are a lot of the startups in this space, because I think there's going to be a lot of activity as retailers reorient themselves to their new digital reality. And then completely unrelated to the pandemic, I think the other interesting thing to watch, and don't get distracted because of this pandemic, is retailers leaning into healthcare. I think the two biggest retailers in the United States, Walmart and Amazon, are both going to make multi-billion-dollar investments in the healthcare space. And it's going to be really interesting to see how healthcare and commerce merge together. So we've seen Amazon roll out a nationwide pharmacy last month, and the day they issued the press release, they took $18 billion of market cap out of Walgreens and CVS. And we've seen Walmart start to open these standalone healthcare clinics to help make healthcare more affordable to folks that are uninsured or underinsured. So lots of interesting stuff happening in that space. I would definitely keep an eye on it.
Nice. Well,
What about you?
I'll have two as well. I could probably go on to your point because something would probably stick. And actually, the first one is right along the lines, Jason, of what you talked about, which is really digital and the investments in digital being accelerated. We did a research project over the course of the summer with 500 retail leaders around the world, and we saw 75% of them anticipate accelerating digital investment in technology, more than 50% actually increasing their investment in people, not necessarily just hiring people, but retraining them, reskilling them, giving them new areas of responsibility, particularly store associates beyond just, scanning and bagging in the store. And, your point around digital not just happening in the virtual world, but also the physical world. I was interviewing Dana Schwartz, the chief digital officer at Keen Footwear, as part of a series I'm doing around becoming retail. And she, put it this way, she looks, to food trucks as inspiration, right? Because for two reasons. One is when they stand up a point of sale, it's not an 18-month implementation. They sign in with username and password and they're able to, transact right away. Second is the food trucks are bringing the food to the people, right? So how did you bring the product to the people for Keen, as an example, on a mountain, on a hiking trail, and really breaking down that barrier of the supply chain? So that's one. And the second is, and we didn't touch upon it here, but I know this is something you're really passionate about, but what we call shopping at the edge, really, based on that same research, we see over the next couple of years, 16% of all digital transactions are going to happen on these emerging, what I'll call commerce platforms, whether it's social, messaging, live streaming, where people are being inspired. It's happening on TikTok, it's happening on WeChat, and it's always been an acquisition vehicle to the retailer or brand's website. And now it's as much about embedding the purchase right there. I know you're passionate about that as well. I don't know if that would be a prediction or any comments you want to make on that front.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. I think, and of all those formats, one that I'm particularly bullish on is the one you mentioned, live streaming. It's hard to overemphasize what a big impact live streaming has had on commerce in China over the last 18 months. And there are a lot of indications that it's equally receptive here in the West. It's coming a little slower, but maybe I'll mention your son is building a cool Zoom rig. The way to monetize that is he should probably be live streaming some products on TikTok and selling something.
Yeah. He's starting with scamming scammers and recording that, because that's apparently a big, I shouldn't probably acknowledge that publicly. So, but he does a pretty good job of it. Anyways, I digress. I think it is a big deal. I mean, it really is the shopping mall of our generation, right? It's creating inspiration, it's creating convenience, it's creating this community, it's social. And hey, because you're doing that, you're drawing traffic, why not monetize it? And for the consumer, hey, why not make it easier, especially as we look for health, safety, and convenience, particularly amidst the pandemic. So, hey, Jason, this has been awesome. I really appreciate not just this, but your friendship, your consultation, your inspiration all the time. You're really at the forefront of what's happening here. And I really appreciate you distilling everything you hear out there and making it easy for people to understand. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh my gosh, the pleasure's all mine. I really enjoy our friendship. I like to think of you as my much better looking younger brother. So
I don't get that often, so I'll take it. So everybody, I thank you for spending some time with us. Wishing you a happy and prosperous holiday season. And once again, I want to thank Salesforce partners for lending their channel, and App Exchange for everything you do for our retail community and the ecosystem you bring to bear for agility and innovation amidst this digital transformation. If you want to learn some more, check out the comments. I put a link in there to drive you to a great article that highlights some of our App Exchange partners in the retail space. And you're also able to link from there to our Holiday Insights Hub. This is a real-time dashboard built on Tableau, by the way, where you can see all of this data in living color. So thank you and be well.
happy holidays, everyone.